What is up, everybody? My name is Logan Strom. Welcome to CTS Sharon Talks Football. Today I wanted to look back at free agency, and I just wanted to give every NFL team a free agency grade as of now. I am aware that free agency is still going on, and there are some moves that still need to happen, and anything else could happen. But I feel like a lot of the moves that we were waiting for have already happened, so I feel like it'd be a good time to do it. But I am expected to make an updated video down the road. So let's not waste any more time. Shout out to my beautiful dog in the background. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on notification bells so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. With all out of the way, let's get started. Alright, so the first team we're looking at here is the Buffalo Bills. And honestly, they didn't really do much, but at the same time, they should have made more moves, but at the same time, didn't really have to do much. So right off the bat, they re-signed Josh Allen to a huge contract, and he absolutely deserves it. And then right after that, you just got a whole bunch of small signings, like just filling up space in the roster. Josh Palmer, they signed to a 3-year deal, but I think that is way too much money for him, even though he is a solid receiver. They signed Khalil Shakir to a 4-year deal up to $60 million. That's pretty crazy. They did sign Joey Bosa, which I think is a solid deal, but at the same time, we don't know if he's going to stay healthy or not. They re-signed Greg Rosenau to a 4-year, $80 million deal. That's pretty big. And then the rest of that, other than re-signing DeMar Hamlin, it's just a bunch of just 1-year signings. If it were up to me, I'd probably give the Bills a B-, probably at the best, like C at like the lowest, but probably a B-, just because they did make some good deals. I do not like the Josh Palmer one, but other than that, they made some solid deals, and they gave Josh Allen a contract that he deserves for sure. Alright, next we got the Miami Dolphins, and right off the bat, just looking at this whole thing, they really didn't do much. They got they signed Zach Wilson probably to be a backup for sure. They signed a bunch of backups. They signed Alexander Madison to be a backup. That's like one noticeable one. They signed Willie Gay. They had to let go of Raheem Mostert. I did see that. So overall, I'm going to say a C-. This is almost a D, but I'll be a little bit nicer here just because they didn't make their team worse. They just didn't get any better. So I'll give them a C-. They really didn't do much. Next, we got the Patriots, and they really didn't do much either other than two pretty big signings here. One, they got Joshua Dobbs to be their backup, which for a backup, he's really good. And then they signed Matt Collins to a 2-year deal. He's a very underrated receiver. I think he'll be good in New England. And then the rest of it, I mean, they signed Morgan Moses, which is a good deal because I think they need to build on the offensive line, and signing him is good. They also got a center in Garrett Bradbury. And then they got a little bit of defensive help, which I know they're still pretty solid at defense. They're not going to act like it's perfect, so the more defense, the better. I'm going to give them a C+. I'm not going to give them a B- just because they really didn't make their team all that better. But at the same time, we still got the draft later. We'll give them a C+. Alright, next we got the Jets. They really haven't made much moves yet, but honestly, some of the moves they made are pretty good ones. First off, they signed Justin Fields to a 2-year deal. Probably most likely to be their starting quarterback, and honestly, I think it's a good move. Personally, I think Justin Fields should have been drafted to the Jets to the beginning. Like, I didn't think he should have been drafted to Chicago. As the moment hit, like, I think he should have either been drafted to the Jets at the time or the Niners, but I think the Niners have a better QB now. I think this is a good brand new start for Justin Fields, and I think he will do wonders there, hopefully. The rest are just a bunch of small signings. They did sign some more offensive line help. They re-signed a little bit of their defense and signed just 1-year deals. Honestly, just because of that Justin Fields signing, I will give them a strong C. But honestly, if it wasn't Justin Fields signing, I'd probably give them a D. So be thankful for that one. Alright, next we're on to the AFC North. We've got the Ravens. They really didn't do much so far. They did re-sign Ronnie Stanley, which is a really good move. They signed D-Hop to a 1-year deal, which I'm not going to lie, I don't think that makes their team any more better. He is super washed, and he really showed that in the Super Bowl and throughout last year. They did sign Cooper Rush to a 2-year contract to be the backup. I think he's solid, but at the same time, I'm not sure if he fits that scheme very well. But let's just see if Lamar ever gets hurt or if it's like week 18 of the season. Even though they really didn't make much moves, they didn't get any worse or any better, so I'll give them a C. But they're not doing too bad so far. Let's just see what they can do in the draft. All right, next we got the Cincinnati Bengals, and they so far are having a really good free agency or good offseason. First of all, they signed Samaje Perine to be basically a backup running back. He's pretty solid. They finally gave Jamar Chase and T. Higgins brand new deals. Jamar being a 4-year, $161 million. T. Higgins being a 4-year, $115 million. So that's really good. Joe Burrow has to be really excited. They re-signed Mike Gesicki, which is a great deal because he was really good on Cincinnati, and I think he's a really good tight end. They re-signed some. They signed some linemen. They re-signed the linemen that actually did well. They re-signed some defensive, and they signed some new defensive help. Honestly, because of those Jamar Chase and T. Higgins signings, I'm going to give them a B+. So far, they're having a really good offseason. All right, next we got the Cleveland Browns, and I'm going to be pretty lenient here. They did sign Kenny Pickett to be the backup, even though he very delusionally believes that he could be the starter. They re-signed Myles Garrett, which I didn't see coming. I thought he was going to a new team. They signed Malik Collins from the Niners. He's pretty solid. They signed Devin Bush. They signed Jerome Baker. They signed some really good defensive help. Overall, I'm going to give them a B- because they really did help their defense. Their defense, I think, got a lot better. Their offense, not so much. But let's just see what the draft brings us. All right, next we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they made some great moves as well. First off, they did have to let go of Najee Harris, but that's fine. I think Jaylen Warren is good enough to be their starter, and I'm excited to see what he can do. They also signed Kenneth Gainwell to be their second back, which I think was a really good move. They signed Mason Rudolph to a reunion 2-year deal. He's back to being the backup. They traded with the Seahawks to get DK Metcalf, which is huge if they can get George Pickens to humble out. That wide receiver duo is going to be insane. They signed Scotty Miller. They signed Donald Parham. And then they signed Darius Slay for the defense. Honestly, I'm going to give them a B+. They made some great moves. Now all we're wondering is can they get themselves out of this funk of being average, and also can they pick up a quarterback, because Russell Wilson is still in free agency. They also have Aaron Rodgers to look for, or they can draft a QB. We have no idea so far. All right, moving on to the AFC South, we've got the Houston Texans, and overall they made a lot of moves, so let's go over the ones that really matter here. They did trade away Laramie Tunsil, but they got a couple draft picks out of it, so I think at the end it sucks, but it's kind of worth it. They signed Christian Kirk, which I think is an underrated receiver when he's healthy. Braxton Berrios was also signed there. He's pretty solid. Trent Brown signed a 1-year deal. That's pretty good, especially the fact that Laramie Tunsil got traded away. Ed Ingram's solid. They got Derek Barnett for the defense. They re-signed Danielle Hunter. They signed Sheldon Rankins, which if he's healthy, he's pretty okay. They gave Derek Stingley Jr. a new contract, which I think is way too much money, but at the same time, he really does deserve it. So who am I to judge? They did trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which he is very good, but he is a loudmouth, so let's see how they handle that. Overall, I give them a B. Like, they did have to trade away Laramie Tunsil, but overall, they got some pretty solid, good players, especially on the defense, so I think they did pretty solid. All right, next we got the Indianapolis Colts, and yeah, they didn't do much. They got Travarius Ward, which is a great deal, but other than that, like, they didn't do anything. They signed Daniel Jones to be the backup. They signed Khalil Herbert to be their backup. Other than the Travarius Ward signing, this is a D. Like, they didn't do much at all. Like, there's really nothing to look forward to so far. All right, next we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. One thing to really say, because we already kind of said it, Christian Kirk got traded away, and he's on the Houston Texans, so they lost one of their wide receivers, but at the same time, he always gets hurt, so who knows. They signed Hunter Long. They signed Nick Mullins to be their backup. Overall, yeah, that's really it. I mean, Eric Murray's a pretty solid signing, too, but yeah, I'm going to say this is another D. Like, they really haven't done much so far. Like, I know the draft is still coming up, but if we're talking about so far, they didn't really do much. All right, next we got the Tennessee Titans, and overall, again, just like the other two, they really didn't do much. They signed Brandon Allen to be their backup. I guess that's cool. They signed Van Jefferson to get hurt over there, so I guess that's cool. They did sign some offensive line help, so that's pretty good. They'd also signed some linebackers, so that's pretty good too. Overall, I'm going to give them a C- just because they signed more players, and I think their upside is a little bit better. but it's really close to a D. Like, realistically, they really didn't do much. All right, next we got the Denver Broncos, and I think we have our first A right off the bat. They signed Jarrett Stidham to be the backup. That's really not the biggest news. They signed Evan Ingram from Jacksonville. That's a huge deal if he stays healthy. I think he's still a really solid receiver. Their defense got absolutely packed. They signed Dre Greenlaw and Talona Hufanga from the San Francisco 49ers. Both really, really good players, especially Dre Greenlaw when they're healthy. I think if they're healthy, they're going to be huge additions to this Broncos defense. Like, overall, their upside's looking great. They're looking like a really solid team. Yeah, overall, this is the first A of the video. They're having a really good offseason. All right, next we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they lost a lot of talent, just to say. They lost Creed Humphrey. They lost Justin Reed. Like, they lost a lot of talent. But they really didn't make much moves to really fill it. I mean, they re-signed Marquise Brown. They re-signed Juju. They re-signed Kareem Hunt. Like, those are pretty solid moves. They did sign Elijah Mitchell, probably to be their third back. Looking at it overall, like, they didn't do anything really. Like, they made some small moves, but that's about it. Overall, I'm going to give them a C-. Like, they really didn't do much at all. Next, we got the Las Vegas Raiders, and they have had an eventful offseason so far. First off, they did get Pete Carroll to be their coach. That's a big deal. They traded with the Seahawks to get Geno Smith. For the future's sake, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but he is a solid quarterback, so let's see what he does in Vegas. They signed Raheem Mostert, which is already an upgrade from the running back room they had last year because it was terrible. They signed Alex Kappa, which is a great offensive lineman deal. They re-signed Max Crosby. They signed Adam Butler. They signed Eric Stokes. Like, overall, I'm going to give them a B. Like, honestly, they could have made one or two bigger moves here, but, like, they made some solid moves overall. I'm going to give them a B. All right, next we got the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think they've had a pretty solid offseason so far. They re-signed Taylor Heineke, which is pretty solid. They signed Najee Harris, which I think is a really good move. Jalen Reagor, I don't know why he sucks. I don't know why they re-signed him. They reunited with Mike Williams, which I think he could still be good. Mekhi Becton, they signed, which is a huge deal because he's a really good lineman. They re-signed Khalil Mack, which is a really good deal. They signed Denzel Perryman. They signed Dante Jackson, which is a good deal. Overall, I'm going to give them a B+. Like, they've made some good moves, and their team got a little bit better. Alright, now we have moved on to the NFC, and starting off with the NFC East, we've got the Dallas Cowboys, and I think, I'm not even trying to be a dick at this point, like, I think this is our very first F, like, they really didn't do anything. They signed two terrible running backs, Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams. They signed a backup receiver. Like, they've had so many issues this season with, like, holes they need to fill, and they didn't fill any of them so far. Like, they really didn't do anything other than re-signing Kevontae Turpin. Like, yeah, this is the first F. Like, they really didn't do anything at all. Alright, next we got the New York Giants, and overall, they really didn't do much, but they did make a couple good moves. First off, they re-signed the greatest quarterback in this generation at this point, Tommy DeVito. Like, okay. They signed Jameis Winston, which I'm going to go in thinking he's going to be the backup because I really don't think he's going to be the starter. They're going to draft a quarterback, right? And they signed a lot of wide receivers, most of them probably to be backups. And then on the offensive line, they signed a couple people. On the defensive side, they signed Paulson Adebo, who is very underrated. But overall, they also signed Javon Holland. Don't want to forget that. That's a really good signing as well. Their defense got a lot better, but their offense, not so much. But honestly, their offense could help out in the draft. I'm going to give them a C. Like, so far, really didn't do much, but honestly, their team could still get better. Alright, next we got the Philadelphia Eagles. So, overall, pretty solid. So, they did sign Dorian Thompson-Robinson to be the backup in one of the most pointless trades in the whole, like, out of everything I've seen in my time watching football. That was a weird trade. They re-signed Saquon to a 2-year extension worth up to $41 million, which is a huge deal. A.J. Dillon is returning, and he is signing with Philly, so I think he could still be okay. They re-signed Lane Johnson. They did have to let go of C.J. and Darius Slayton, but honestly, they have a lot of young talent, so I don't think that's a big deal. They re-signed Zach Bond, which is a great deal. Overall, not much, but I'll still give them a B minus. They re-signed the players that they needed to re-sign, and their team is still really strong. So that's mostly why I'm giving them this grade. All right, next we got the Washington Commanders, and they have had a very eventful offseason. They re-signed Marcus Mariota to be the backup. That's good. They signed Deebo Samuel in a trade from the Niners. That's a pretty good deal if he stays healthy. They re-signed Zach Ertz, which is a really good deal because he was very underrated. They picked up Laramie Tunsil from a trade. That's a huge move. He's an excellent offensive lineman. They picked up some defense that could really help. They re-signed Bobby Wagner. They picked up Javon Kinlaw. Like, they made a lot of great moves. Overall, I'm also going to give them an A. Like, they made some great moves, and their team got, honestly, a lot better. All right, moving on to the NFC North, we've got the Chicago Bears. And I think they did make some good moves. It might not look like it here, but they really did. First off, they signed Devin Duvernay to be their basically their kick returner, which I think is a really smart move. They signed Joe Thunley, which is a really good move. They signed Grady Jarrett, which is another great move. I'm gonna give them a B plus. Like, I don't think they're like an A yet, but honestly, they're on the right track. And if they sign Keenan Allen to a 1-year deal, I think that would be even better. So far, I will give them a B plus. Good job so far. All right, next we got the Detroit Lions, and looking at this, they didn't do much. I mean, they re-signed Tim Patrick, which is a pretty solid move. They re-signed Dan Skipper, which is a good move. They signed Marcus Davenport, which I guess is a good move. Overall, like, nothing to really see here. I'm going to give them a D. Like, they didn't do much, and their team didn't really get much better from this. All right, next we got the Green Bay Packers, and other than signing Aaron Banks, they didn't do anything. Like, they didn't do anything at all. Like, they signed Isaiah McDuffie, which I guess is good, and McCole Hartman, I guess, could be good for, like, a kick returner, but overall, I'm going to give it an F. Like, they didn't do much at all, and this team has a lot of holes to fill, and so far, they haven't done it. Like, this is not good so far. All right, next we got the Minnesota Vikings, and I love their offseason so far. All right, starting off, they re-signed Aaron Jones, which I think is a great move. They traded with the Niners to pick up Jordan Mason, which I think is a really solid move. He was really good on San Francisco when CMC was hurt. So him with Aaron Jones is going to be a really good running back duo. They re-signed Rondale Moore, I guess is pretty good. They signed Ryan Kelly, which is a really good move. They also signed Will Fries, which is a huge deal. Like, their offensive line just got so much better. Looking at their defense, which also got improved, they signed Jonathan Allen, which is a really good deal. They also signed Javon Hargrave, which when he's healthy, he's really good as well. They re-signed Harrison Smith. And, overall, I'm going to give them an A. Like, they had a really good offseason so far, and honestly, it could just get better. Up next, we got the Atlanta Falcons, and dude, I know I'm not supposed to feel this way because they're a rival of mine, but looking at this team every single offseason pisses me off because they do nothing to improve their team. Like, they lost Grady Jarrett, which is a pretty huge loss, and what did they do with that? Really nothing. They re-signed Morgan Fox. They signed Morgan Fox. That's really it. Like, overall, they didn't do anything, and they didn't really sign big moves other than Jake Matthews. Overall, I'm going to give them a D. Like, they didn't really do much at all. All right, next we got the Carolina Panthers, and they did make a couple noticeable moves. First off, they re-signed Andy Dalton to a 2-year deal to continue to be their backup, and I think that's a solid move. They signed Rico Dowdle, which I think the Cowboys were really stupid to get rid of. But, yeah, he's really solid, and I think he can be really good in Carolina. I believe they re-signed Adam Thielen. I didn't see that on here, but I could be wrong at the same time. I'm not sure on that. I thought I saw that, but they re-signed J.C. Horn to a 4-year deal worth $100 million, which I think is way too much money because he's always been hurt, and he's good when he plays for sure, but he's always hurt. Like, I think that's way too much money. Overall, I'm going to give him a C just because even though that Rico Dowdle signing is really good, I really did not like that J.C. Horn extension, and overall, they really didn't make much moves. All right, next we got the New Orleans Saints, and right off the bat, we're reuniting with Brandon Cooks, which I think is pretty cool, but he's going to be like the third receiver. I don't think he's going to get much playing time. We re-signed Juwan Johnson, which I think is a solid deal. We re-signed Cam Jordan. We re-signed Chase Young. We re-signed Tyrann Mathieu. And we picked up Justin Reed, which I think is a good deal. So far, I'm going to give him a C just because we did make some solid moves. Our team really didn't get much better. But at the same time, we got a pretty high draft pick, and I think we could pick up someone really good there. But overall, not really much to go home about. All right, next we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and honestly, I think the moves they had to make, like they did, and I think they're really good moves. First of all, they re-signed Chris Godwin, which I think when he's healthy, he's still a really strong receiver. They re-signed Sterling Shepard, which I think was really solid, especially in the playoffs. They signed Hassan Reddick, which if he can get his shit together, I think could also be a really good signing. And yeah, overall, they also re-signed Levante David too. Overall, I'll give him a B minus. I mean, this could really not age well, but I think they made some solid moves and their team got a little better. And to end off the video with our last division, we got the NFC West. First, we got the Arizona Cardinals. They made some solid moves, I will say. They signed Jacoby Brissett to be their backup, which I think he's solid as a backup. They re-signed Zay Jones, which is pretty solid. They signed Josh Sweat, which is a huge deal. Overall, I'll give them a B minus just because the moves they made were really strong, even though they didn't really make much of them. So yeah, so far, good offseason so far. Alright, next we got the Los Angeles Rams, and they made a lot of good moves. So first they re-signed Jimmy G to be their backup, okay. They restructured Matthew Stafford's contract to keep him around, which I think is a great move. They signed Devontae Adams to be their second receiver. Yes, I said second receiver. I think Puka Nacua is still their number one receiver. Like, I don't think Devontae is the best receiver in football. But yeah, great move. They re-signed Tutu Atwell. Yeah, overall, I'll give them a B. Like, again, not much moves, but the moves they made, really good ones. Next, we got the San Francisco 49ers, and man, talk about a team and a fan base that has gone through it during the last couple months. They lost so much talent, man. They lost Aaron Banks. They almost lost Kyle Juszczyk, but they re-signed him, thank God. They lost Dre Greenlaw. They lost Trevarius Ward. They lost Hufanga. They lost Javon Hargrave. They lost Malik Collins. Like, they lost a lot of talent, and they also lost Deebo Samuel. So, like, with the amount of talent they lost is honestly not making up for the moves they made so far. I mean, they signed Mac Jones to be their backup. I guess that's good. They signed Demarcus Robinson. I guess that's pretty solid. But, yeah, overall, they didn't really make much moves. I know they're trying to make a contract for Brock Purdy, but at this point, it's not looking worth it. I'm giving them a D+. Like, they really didn't do much, and they've had a pretty sad offseason. And lastly, the last team we got is the Seattle Seahawks, and this one had pretty much a huge offseason so far. They signed Sam Darnold, which I think could still be good, but at the same time, my personal opinion, I think he's going to die in Seattle, but at the same time, offseason's not over yet, so they could make some good moves. They signed Cooper Kupp to a 3-year deal, which I think is pretty solid if he's healthy. They signed MVS, which I guess is good. They signed Josh Jones. They signed DeMarcus Lawrence, which I think could be solid, but I think him and Michael Parsons, social media battle is really funny. You should check that out. And then they re-signed Ernest Jones. I'll give them a B minus. A part of me wants to give them a C because I'm not sure about the Sam Darnold deal yet. And then also they lost DK Metcalf. But I'll be optimistic. I'll give them a B minus. And there you guys have it. That was me grading every single team's offseason so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully this didn't drag too long. If it did, I'm sorry. Let me know down in the comments on what grade you would give your NFL team so far this offseason. I would love to know. In the meantime, that's where we're going to be done for the day. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. I'm Logan Sharon. I'll see you next time.